that needs a dedicated watchdog with its own budget, staff, and voice in cabinet. Merging commissions does not remove bureaucracy. It removes priority. It tells every Zimbabwean girl that her safety is just one item on a long list. Honorable Speaker, ma'am, when an institution fails, we reform it. When it does not deliver results, we change it. But when an institution delivers results, protects citizens, strengthens our laws, and advances our constitution, we do not abolish it. We strengthen it, keep Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission strong, keep the Gender Commission independent. I plea with this House to protect Section 56 by protecting the institution that defends it. I so submit.
Thank you, Honorable Tawamera. The next honorable member to take the floor is Honorable Twashaya.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to add my voice to this very important bill. Madam Speaker, I wish to register my spirited and strong opposition to CAB3. It is my firm belief that the bill suffers from both a process and substance or content deficit and must therefore be rejected in its entirety and without any exception. I wish to first register my process misgivings, Madam Speaker. The 2013 Constitution was a bipartisan effort as it was developed under the inclusive government and had the advantage of inclusivity, a key ingredient to the making of a social contract between the governed and the governing. Even more fundamentally, Madam Speaker, the 2013 Constitution was a national effort that sought to develop a homegrown constitution from the Lancaster House Constitution and received a thunderous approval as nearly 95% voted yes in the 2013 referendum. To then seek to change the same constitution that was widely accepted as a progressive constitution, not only in Zimbabwe, Madam Speaker, but beyond, without going back to the people, will be the highest betrayal after Morrison Nyati, Madam Speaker. Section 328 of the Constitution is instructive in terms of amendments of this nature. Let me salute the drafters of the 2013 Constitution and the people of Zimbabwe for seeing the current mischief ahead of time and therefore directed that in such circumstances, a referendum must be convened to change the term limits and for the incumbent office holders to benefit from these constitutional provisions that they would have engineered. Madam Speaker, I put it to this House that any amendment to the term limits that benefit the incumbent outside Section 328 provisions, and in particular a referendum, will be fundamentally flawed. It is also not a secret, Madam Speaker, apart from the fact that Parliament is conflicted to adjudicate on this constitutional bill on the basis that it stands to benefit from the 2-year extension. This House, Madam Speaker, has also been subjected to some massive re-engineering, as it no longer reflects the will of the people as expressed in 2023 elections due to the controversial recalls that saw 33 people's representatives being recalled from this parliament. No party was given a 2/3 majority in 2023 that would give it the legitimacy to change the national charter. History has no blank pages, Madam Speaker. It shall be remembered that this was the modus operandi of the Second Republic as it prepared to unconstitutionally and undemocratically amend the national charter to its own benefit. Madam Speaker, allow me to transition to my third process misgiving. I also wish to register my disappointment in the manner in which CAB3 public hearings were conducted. The public hearings were grossly inadequate in number and in distribution. The public hearings were also marred by violence and intimidation. I personally attended the City Sports CAB3 public hearing and am ashamed that as Parliament, we failed to give the people a chance to freely express their views without fear or favor. The City Sports public hearing was not a public hearing, Madam Speaker, but a party meeting. The meeting was hijacked by party functionaries who became responsible for deciding who
Order,
spoke
Honorable
and
Fashayo.
who.
Order, Honorable Fashayo. Honorable Fashayo.
Point of order.
Point of order.
Point of order.
May you sit down, honorable members? Do you have evidence on what you are saying, honorable?
Yes, I do have evidence.
Honorable member.
I was a witness, as I have already said. I was there in person. I'm talking about my own experiences, Madam Speaker, and I should be allowed to say my own experiences in this House. If there is someone who has an alternative narrative, they are free to do so.
Honorable.
This is my narrative.
Order, Honorable Fashayo. May you debate, Honorable Fashayo?
Point of order, Madam Speaker, ma'am.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will proceed
Point of
with my
order.
debate.
Point of order.
It should be embarrassing to this House,
Point of
Madam
order,
Speaker,
Madam
that no one was held responsible for these transgressions to this day,
Order, Honorable Fashayo.
including the famous case of lawyer Doug Coulthard, whose phone was snatched by
Order,
a
Honorable
non-violent
Fashayo.
official.
What's your point of order, Honorable Shaw?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, ma'am. Kana iri mhosva yakaparwa inomangarwa kumapurisa noti muno, Madam Speaker, ma'am. Saka vakataura nyaya dzodoti pane vanhu vakarohwa kupublic hearing muno pakaita violence dzoripotwa kumapurisa noti muno, Madam Speaker, ma'am.
Totenda, Honorable Fashayo. Honorable Fashayo.
Thank you,
May
Madam
you
Speaker.
debate.
Indeed, the case was reported. It is before the police, but nothing has been done, like I indicated. Madam Speaker, we must bow our heads in shame. The only way to salvage this process that is now thoroughly discredited is through a referendum, as stated earlier. Madam Speaker, let me now transition to my content or substance misgivings. The first one. The proposal to replace direct popular election of the president with election by parliament is a betrayal of those that died in the War of Liberation. In defense of one man, one vote principle, voting for a president is in itself an act of sovereignty, and its removal significantly distances executive authority from popular consent. I have had reference to other jurisdictions, Madam Speaker, and in particular South Africa and Botswana. But, Madam Speaker, contextual intelligence is always important in these debates. There is a tendency to cherry pick what other countries are doing. Yet we all know that South Africa has a wholly PR system where both parliament and president are elected through a proportional electoral system. I do not support an electoral system that has first past the post system for members of parliament and a proportional representation for the president in our context, because I see it as an attempt to manipulate the system to favor the winning chances of one party whose presidential candidates have not been popular. The proposal will also open floodgates to unscrupulous characters who can use their money, or should I say ill-gotten wealth, to buy legislators and become presidents.
Point of order.
Madam Speaker,
Honorable Fashayo.
the honorable member is also cherry picking, but by the reason of standing up is popularity of those who go to elections is measured ordered or seen by those who win. Those who
Order,
get
honorable
mandates.
members.
Point of order.
If the chief whip has got his points,
Honorable
when it's
Ropa.
time to debate,
Honorable Ropa.
we cannot allow him to interject the debate to debate.
Honorable Ropa, amutenderwe kuisa point of order, paneme point of order. Allow Honorable Chief Whip to,
Right.
he's not debating, he's raised,
Madam,
he's
Madam
raised in point of
Speaker,
order, he's not debating.
Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, we cannot allow honorable members to stand up and lie that people are unpopular when they are in
You are
office through a
debating.
mandate election.
You are debating.
We don't know which political.
You are debating. Sit down. Wait for your turn to debate.
Order, honorable members.
Madam Speaker,
Engineer, we have passed that level.
Sorry, Madam Speaker.
You are all
As the Chief
intellectuals, we
Whip,
don't
that I'm
expect,
using-
no, honorable.
Abasi engineer kana basiwe.
We don't expect such behavior from you. We are intellectuals, honorable. Order. Order.
Madam Speaker, my point is, the honorable member says we are amending because we want to protect unpopular people. Yet, we, from my political party, we won the elections. That's why we are incumbents at the moment.
Madam Speaker,
I don't know why they are
this is
not-
debate.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Whip. Honorable Fatayo,
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
you can go ahead.
Constitutions, Madam Speaker, must never be tailor-made for individuals. I also reject the proposal to extend presidential, parliamentary, and local authority terms from 5 years to 7 years. Looking at the governance record over the last 9 years, I do not see any justification whatsoever to warrant an extension. Zimbabweans also overwhelmingly expressed their desire to have clear-cut term limits in the 2013 referendum, and any change to the current provisions will be a betrayal of the people of Zimbabwe, more so in the absence of a referendum. The authority to govern is derived from the people. We were all given 5-year terms, and we must stick to the mandate we got from citizens in line with the principle of popular sovereignty as espoused in Section 3, subsection 2 of our Constitution. On enlargement of Senate, Madam Speaker, enlargement of Senate to have more appointed individuals by the President is a clear violation of the principle of separation of powers, where the three arms of government are supposed to be distinct and independent. The proposal is made more ridiculous by the proposal to have Parliament as the electoral college that elects the President. On transferring voters' roll functions from ZEC to the Registrar General Office, the former is an independent commission and the latter is an office under the direct control of the executive. It is therefore important to keep such a function that is central to our electoral processes away from the direct control of the executive in order to cure the mischief of toxicity and the illegitimacy tag that the minister referred to during his second reading speech. I therefore do not support the proposal and urge us all to keep the voters' roll function under ZEC. I do not believe that it is a coincidence, Madam Speaker, that a new delimitation commission is being proposed at the same time that the electoral system for the election of the president is being changed. It is quite obvious that the party composition of parliamentary seats will determine who ultimately wins the presidency. This new commission appointed by the executive can thus become a gerrymandering vehicle whose role will be to secure the presidency. The delimitation function must be left as is currently. The provision to remove partisan restrictions on traditional leaders is baffling. I think the current wisdom is superior in that traditional leaders have a very important role to play in our communities, including being custodians of our customs, traditions, and culture. Traditional leaders also preside over traditional cases in traditional courts, and therefore impartiality is key to their effective discharge of their duties. The proposal reminds us of how colonial administration before 1980 reduced the esteemed offices of traditional leaders to agents of colonialism and detach them from the citizens. We must therefore move away from such colonial vestiges. The proposal to transfer the role of the Zimbabwe Gender Commission to the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission is tantamount to deprioritizing gender equality as a key government focus, contrary to the provisions of the National Development Strategy 2 that elevated gender to a thematic area. Zimbabwe Gender Commission is a specialized agency. It is a commission that looks at a matter that requires laser focus and specialized attention. The differences between the two entities can be likened, Madam Speaker, to the difference between a general practitioner in medical field and a...
you are left with 5 minutes. May you wrap up.
Thank you very much. I will finish in 5 minutes. The difference between the two entities can be likened to the difference between a general practitioner and a specialist such as a gynecologist or an orthopedic surgeon. You cannot replace the latter by the former. This proposal risks undermining efforts to advance women's rights in a country that is still plagued by abuse of women. The proposal to consolidate the executive control over the judiciary and the prosecution will significantly increase the president's control over the appointment of judges through the removal of public participation and transparent interview processes. This is certainly at variance with the principles of accountability and institutional independence, which are key cornerstones of constitutional democracies. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, it is my considered view that this bill is a monumental democratic regression that seeks to protect the interests of political elites at the expense of ordinary people and democratic tenants. The bill is a pipeline for massive authoritarian consolidation, creating an imperial president and further weakening democratic institutions. Contrary to the assertions by the Minister of Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs during the second reading, this bill is actually about extending the president's time in office, does take away the right for citizens to choose a president of their choice. It is about internal succession issue of the ruling party, seeks to postpone elections to a later date, thus create a very dangerous precedent and a moral hazard where incumbents can extend their terms and postpone if not to remove elections altogether. And yes, it seeks to concentrate power in the hands of the president, not just in the running of elections, but in everything, including in other arms of government, contrary to the separation of power doctrine. Any attempt to extend term limits outside a referendum is unprocedural, unconstitutional, undemocratic, fundamentally flawed, and will set a bad and dangerous precedent where politicians can change term limits willy-nilly without going back to the people. I have heard the lame argument that the bill seems to lengthen and not to extend the term limit. I care less about the nomenclature because the import is the same. And in any case, Section 328, subsection 1, provides a definition of term limits provisions. Term limit provisions means a provision of the Constitution which limits the length of time that a person may hold or occupy a public office. Madam Speaker, a referendum must not only be seen as a legal requirement, but a political imperative. A CEO of a company cannot extend his contract without the approval of the shareholders or the board of directors. Otherwise, it will be tantamount to a hostile takeover. This bill pushes our country to the precipice of instability and more toxicity. Thank you, Madam Speaker, just rounding up. This bill pushes our country to the precipice of instability and more toxicity. I urge us all to prioritize the national interest over personal benefit by overwhelmingly rejecting this bill in its entirety. Our fidelity, Madam Speaker, always must be to the country and not to narrow partisan and personal interests and agendas. May God bless Zimbabwe. Thank you.
next honorable member to take the floor is Honorable Duayo, followed by Honorable Maburutsi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, ma'am, for giving me an opportunity to add Chipinge East's constituents' voice to the debate in question. The constitutional amendment comes at a time when Zimbabwe, for the first time in 2 decades, is finding her economic feet. This stability follows the carefully crafted and implemented short to medium-term development programs, the Transitional Stabilization Program that ran from 2018 to 2020, and that formed the foundation for NDS-1, which ran from the year 2021 to 2025, and eventually the NDS-2, which is running from this year, 2026 to 2030. These policies have enhanced macroeconomic credibility as the country, for the first time in more than 20 years, enjoys sustained price stability, as evidenced by a single-digit inflation rate since the year 2024. Balance of payments stability, falling broad and strict unemployment rates, and positive economic growth rates averaging 5% for the past 5 years. It is this astronomical economic growth rate and development of which we are witnesses that has pushed millions of Zimbabweans to demand that the President, His Excellency, Comrade Dr. E.D. Mnangagwa, must continue in his position until 2030. So it's the works that has been done, project that has been completed in record time, that has convinced the people of Zimbabwe to demand the term length to be extended to 7 years for the current and succeeding president, that the second dispensation may start and complete new projects, and the few that are still work in progress. The people of Zimbabwe are not saying anyone should stay forever. That is naturally impossible. They only want additional 2-year extension to the current term and successive 7 years terms thereafter. It was not electoral violence that pushed the millions of Zimbabweans to demand the term length extension. In fact, in 2023, we had the most peaceful election ever. In fact, it was irreversible, astronomical development trajectory that made the millions of Zimbabwe to demand the term length extension. Madam Speaker, ma'am, for the past 2 years, hitherto, the echoes became louder and louder from every corner, every ward, traditional leaders, every village, almost all churches, except a few church denominations whose missions were closely tied to our occupiers or the then colonialists during the War of Liberation. Some of these denominations have not repented of their intentions. I feel it's a high time that they must be reminded not to depart from their mission of preaching the good news of the Lord Jesus Christ and not to entangle themselves in opposition politics, which has dismally failed in Zimbabwe.
Point of order.
It is therefore not surprising to see 99.5% of more than 500,000 of those who participated.
Point of order, Honorable.
Madam Speaker, ma'am, there is an assertion that was made by Honorable Duayo, which asserts that certain churches, most of them very honorable, have worked with this country even in the toughest times of the liberation struggle. Their call for justice has been called as opposition activities. I call on him to withdraw unconditionally.
Honorable, I think you got your time to debate. Allow Honorable to debate.
Madam Speaker, ma'am. Madam Speaker,
you were given your own time, then you debated. Allow Honorable to debate.
The integrity of this House is at stake. Allowing that to flow would have so many repercussions. It's okay, Madam Speaker, if you're supporting such a skewed perspective. Thank you for holding that.
Honorable, you may continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, ma'am. It is therefore not surprising to see 99.5% of more than 500,000 of those who participated in the public hearing voicing their support for Constitutional Amendment number 3 bill. 99.5%, Madam Speaker, ma'am. A few, only less than 1% could not fathom such an overwhelming majority could support the bill. They were still stuck on the 2023 election outcome, despite the fact that His Excellency the President, Dr. E.D. Mnangagwa, had the majority vote. They expected exactly the same results. They forgot to take into account two main variables. One, time difference. Number two, the development that has taken place to date. This is 2026. The harmonized election took place in 2023. There was no trabablas then. There is one now. And some are work in progress. State-of-the-art cancer machines have not been procured then. Now they have been procured. We had no stable currency of our own then. Now we have a stable gold-backed zinc currency. Time will not allow me to mention about many other flagship infrastructure projects, such as roads, hospital rehabilitation, water and sanitation, among others, which were not completed then. Such developments naturally make the second dispensation more attractive. Madam Speaker, I went on to scientifically determine whether the number of participants at the sample size was statistically adequate, considering a finite population of about 6 million registered voters. Despite the fact that in practice, only around 60% actually votes, I used the highest potential number of voters of 6 million. The reason why I defined my population as eligible voters is basically because the crux or apex of the debate in question on the Constitutional Amendment Bill, at least in my opinion, is on presidential and parliamentary election and electoral cycle. I therefore set my aim at 6 million. I also wanted a sample size that gives us the minimum margin of error of 1% given our population size. This implies that I set a 99% confidence level of rejecting a null hypothesis. With this variable in place, I then employed the widely used Cochrane sample size formula. The answer I obtained is 5,966, which is approximately 6,000. This implies that according to the Cochrane sample size model, at least 6,000 participants or respondents were enough to determine whether eligible voters were endorsing CAB3 or not for the given confidence level and margin of error. But we went overboard to get an overwhelming 500,000 participants, with more than 99% endorsing all the clauses and a paltry less than 1% rejecting the amendment. Madam Speaker, ma'am, this is not mere statistics, but the voice of the people. They were voicing continued price stability. They were voicing their support for continued positive economic growth. They were voicing their support for continued balance of payment stability. And this, in my opinion, was a result of the captain of the ship, to be specific.
Order, Honorable. What's your point of order, Honorable?
Mubato wechigaro maite henyu muno mumba mamuri pachigaro pamuri papo mutungamiro wemba ino Honorable Speaker Mdenda vakati paunonotaura nyaya dzechekuita nemanhamba mastatistics muchirungu unofanira kuita chunhu chekuti vanhu vakada unoti tsvakurudza vanoita verify statistics dzemamiriyoni dziri kutaurwa nahonorable vari kudhibheta hanifunge kuti tikati vauye nadzo vagokupai document rinoratidza izvozvo vanogona
kukupai. Honorable order. Honorable Hamauswa. Muri kuti hamufunge hamusati maona kuti vanouya nazvo here kana kuti havauye nazvo. Saka ngatitendere honorable Ndwayo vaite debate ravo vapedzi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, ma'am, for your protection. They were voicing continued price stability. They were voicing their support for continued positive economic growth. They were voicing their support for continued balance of payment stability. And this, in their opinion, was a result of the captain of the ship, to be specific. They cannot imagine slipping back into the 2008 economic quagmire. And Parliament, for the people and by the people, cannot be seen opposing the voice of the people. Madam Speaker, ma'am, lest we forget, it took us more than 20 years since the Black Friday of the 1997 to find a working formula, a working solution to the then years defined by currency crisis, exchange rate volatility, and price instability, economic recession, and widening balance of payment deficit. We cannot forget those years when our supermarkets were defined by empty shelves, when winding queues in shop verandas and service stations were the order of the day and night. Now, we have fully stocked the supermarkets with more than 60% of locally manufactured products. Fuel queues have disappeared. We now have a working Zimbabwe called CAB. And only last week, we just landed one of the most powerful non-permanent seats of the UN Security Council. G7 countries such as Germany could not make it. This is Africa's endorsement of our diplomat-in-chief, Africa's and the world at large endorsement of our engagement and re-engagement diplomacy. The world's endorsement of our country's international image and relations is alluded to by Honorable Shamu in his point of national interest. Once again, befitting congratulations to the sons of the soil, befitting congratulations to our diplomat-in-chief and the president, His Excellency Dr. E.D. Mnangagwa Munumutapa, to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, Honorable Professor Mugwira and team. A job well done indeed. It is in this vein that on behalf of Chipinge East and on my own behalf, I stand supporting CAB3. Especially clauses 4, 9, and 10, which represent the wishes of the millions of Zimbabwe that came out in their hundreds of thousands to support the extension of the term length from 5 years to 7 years, both for the president and the members of parliament, amending sections 95, 143, and 158 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe. This will allow policy consistency and accountability during the tenure of the National Development Strategy 2, and align it with the regional, continental, and global frameworks, such as the SADC Regional Indicative Strategic Development Plan, which runs from 2020 to 2030, and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDG, 2015 to 2030. They are all coming to an end by the year 2030. Any policy disruption a year or 2 years before the end of this program is most likely to trigger some adverse economic effects and accountability challenges. After 2030, the Second Republic leadership has to account for the Vision 2030 blueprint. The leadership has to account for the National Development Strategy blueprint. An additional 2 years does not mean the current president is indispensable. This can only be done if the founders of such programs drives their vision to the end. Defining a 7-year term as indispensable leadership tenure is misplaced. 7-year term does not mean absence of democracy. There is no empirical evidence that shows that less than 7 years means more democratic space. Never. Neither does a 7-year mean lack of democracy. We have many mature democracies with 7-year term, such as Italy. A 7-year term does not imply retrogressivity. And mind you, we are not here to represent the voice of scholars, but the millions of Zimbabweans who, without mincing their words, want this amendment. In fact, it's 2 years late. Moreover, as some debaters before me have already alluded to, such constitutional reforms are not unique to Zimbabwe, but has since been implemented by even the so-called founders of democracy. In Europe, several countries have since moved to 7-year presidential terms, including but not limited to Italy, Ireland, and Kazakhstan.
Order, Honorable Joayo. May you wind up, Honorable Joayo? You are left with 3 minutes.
Fine.
Madam Speaker, let me come closer home to the sub-Saharan African countries, which we are part of. In the year 2008, Cameroon amended its constitution, provide for a 7-year presidential term, followed by those other countries. Guinea conducted public consultation in which about 25,000 people participated to enter its suburb. Yet in our case, more than 500,000. These millions are our bosses. They want the amendment to be done. Madam Speaker, who are we to resist the Sabbath of the Lord? After 7 years, then shall there be rest. Far be it from us, Madam Speaker, as Parliament, that we are found hindering the millions of Zimbabwe by not allowing sufficient time. A formula that has allowed the supremacy of economics over politics, the supremacy of real economic development over slogans, defined by tangible products beyond the ability to read and write. The Second Republic has rewritten the principles of political science. The benefits of frequent elections beyond those printing election materials the world over must be reconsidered. Coming to direct versus indirect vote. There are some who think the indirect vote will rob the Zimbabweans of one man, one vote. Do they imply that South Africa is denying its citizens of their right to vote? Is Botswana denying its citizens? Is USA, which uses an electoral system, denying its citizens the right to vote? Surely no. That thought is misplaced. Studies have shown that the majority of people vote on partisan basis, which is not threatened in this bill. It is actually strengthened. The Constitution Amendment Bill also seeks to reform our voting model. This enhances institutional capacity as voting will be dictated along partisan lines. Chipinge East applauded this amendment as it eliminates possibility of delays in forming government due to mere court cases. The worst case scenario is when the loser actually argues that the party does not belong to had voted for him. The bill brings such measures to an end. Moreover, it eliminates the big name mentality above the superiority of political parties. In political parties' constitution, the attempt is to try and make the political parties supreme over individuals. But this has not been the case, especially in opposition parties in Zimbabwe. The big name mentality has weakened opposition politics as noble ideas are ignored in favor of the so-called big names in opposition circles. It also eliminates the possibility of populating or littering the voters' roll with presidential candidates with no one to vote for them except themselves. This lowers printing costs and enhances efficiency. In short, what this clause is saying, you can only become president.
Point of order.
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
Point of order. Chairman Kwan. Point of order.
Order, Honorable.
Point of order.
Order, Honorable Joy.
Time up. Thank you. My point of order, Madam Speaker. They could.
Ngavawedzerwe nguva, Honorable Speaker.
I object.
Honorable Makumire. Itai order, did it? Itai order. Itai order, Honorable Makumire. Amuswana adikika vanoramba vachitsurwa each and every time. Ini ndine time panapa. Ndiri kubata time panapa. Saka mundiudzire nguva. Ndini ndavaudza kuti 4 minutes. Saka time ndakabata panapa. Itai order, Honorable Makumire.
Order, Honorable Makumire, order.
Matiziri pepe.
Wrap up, Honorable.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In fact, the indirect
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
The indirect vote is a master
Point of order, Madam
that
Speaker.
insulates majority political parties.
Point of order, yako Honorable Lawyer, vasati vataura anything.
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
Ndaita ruling pana Honorable Makumire, saka point of order yako
my point of order, can you clarify to us as members? We were once told that you are not the one who holds the watch.
Now you are saying you're the one who is timekeeping.
maita basa honorable chigarei pasi maita basa chigarei pasi maita basa honorable Dluwayo pedzisai tiende pane next person.
Point of privilege.
Thank you, madam.
Point of privilege. Madam Speaker, you cannot automatically adjust or increase time for the debater without the consent of the House. We must give you consent. You can't just make a ruling to say I have given you extra time without our consent.
Order, Honorable Makumiri.
We are a house of rules and orders.
Order, Honorable Makumiri.
You must be governed by this green book.
Order, Honorable Makumiri. Honorable Makumiri, ndine time panapa. Saka ndamauza kuti 4 minutes left. Ndine time panapa.
You must be guided
kana
by the
mukauya
green book.
mukacheka pano ndine time yandiri kutonyora
You
pasi.
must be guided by this. Hamugoni kuwedzera mulungu
Chigarai pasi, Honorable Makumiri. Tazvizwa garai pasi maita basa. Honorable, only 30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Dluwayo. Honorable Maburutsi.
Ndinoda kukutendai mubati wechigaro nenguva yamandipa kuti ndiise pfungwa dzangu paConstitutional Amendment Bill number 3. Mubati wechigaro ndakazvimirira pamwe chete nokumirira vanondituma vokwaChivi South. Mhuri yeChivi South inotsigira zvokurevesa Amendment Bill number 3. Ndinoda hangu kuti nditende chaizvo vanoremekedzwa baba vaziyambi nevose vavakashanda navo basa iri raunza bhiri rinoisotapira muparamende yedu electoral cycle. Ndakazvimiririra ndinotsigira zvakanyanya kuwedzerwa kwamakore kubva kuma5 kuinda kuma9 etembo yapuresident pamwe chete neparliament namakansela. Izvi zvinopa mukana hurumende inogona yebato reZANU-PF inotonga Rubaba Mnangagwa kuti ipedzise national projects ari kuchemegwa navana veZimbabwe. Hapana kana umwe une mubvunzo pakuwedzerwa kwamakore avo kuvanhu vanobva constituency yeChivi South kwaChivi. Vanototarisira kuti dai yawedzerwa kuti nyaya yetokwe mukosi dhamu master plan iya ipere, vana veZimbabwe vadle rifa ravo. Tine dhamu rinonzi Kunzvi dhamu iro ratotarisira kuti dai rapera pamwe chete neGwaishangani. Hapana usingashuviri kuti dai yavona basa irori rapedzewa. Ndobva ipapo ndoinda the election ya president neparliament. Guided nesection 97 yeconstitution yedu inovhumidza dare rino kuti ribvise kana kuti kuimpicha president. Handivoni pane chingakonesa kuti vanhu vapuwa simba rokubvisa vatadze kuva nesimba rokupinza basa.
ndine vimbo yokuti vakawanda kwazvo kuze kwavashomanene vanotendegwa vavo kuva nepfungwa dzavo, asi ruzhinji kana gwataura wataura. Chakanaka mukaka haurungwi munyu sachigaro. Gwaro iri rakanaka zvokurevesa. Naizvozvo ndinoti dai rafamba rakangodero, nokuti rinoita kuti nyika yedu isimbirire pabudiriro. Tisawana mari dzinopota dzichiindiswa kumaelection zuva roga roga, asi kudhivhelopa upenyu hweruzhinji yeZimbabwe. Zvokwadi ndikaramba ndowanza zvipikiri pachitehwe cheshindi, basa rabafa muno nevamwe vatanga rakakura kwazvo. Naizvozvo ndikadambura, ndinotenda mubato wechigara.
Thank you, Honorable Maburitse. Honorable Minister.
Notenda mubati wechigaro. Ndinomuva kuti nharo kana kakava ratiri kuita richigumira pano pazuva ranhasi. Ndinotenda.
Honorable Chief Whip. That's okay. Thank you. It has been moved that the House do now adjourn the debate. Okay, the debate. Thank you. Order, honorable members. It has been moved that the debate be now adjourned. Is there any debate? I put the question that the debate now adjourned. Those who are of that opinion will say aye. Those of the contrary opinion will say no. I think I have it. The aye have it. The question is accordingly affirmed. The debate is adjourned. To what date, Honorable Minister?
To tomorrow, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move that the House do now adjourn.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Minister, it has been moved that the House do now adjourn. Is there any debate? I put the question that the House do now adjourn. Those who are of that opinion will say aye. Those of the contrary opinion will say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The question is accordingly affirmed, and the House is now adjourned. To what date, Honorable Minister?
Tomorrow, Madam Speaker, ma'am.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.